Hi, my name is Mary Beth Grossman, and I'm interviewing my two grandmas, Helen Waite, who is 65, and Lois Gaskell, who is 68.
68. Hi, Mary Beth.
Hi. We're going to ask them some questions today, and I'll start with the first one. What are some of the things you remember when you were 11? Helen.
When I was 11, I lived up in Sheridan Terrace, which is, in those days, was sort of a little bit out on the edge of country. It wasn't very heavily populated. Now it's all grown up. And we had a ball field behind our house, and what I remember is that I was always the last one picked. You know, and I can remember they would go hand over hand, and who got to be the first pick and throw the bat, and if you threw it 20 feet or something, like you got to pick the first one. I was the last one picked because I was the worst player.
How about you, Lois?
Well, I didn't play any ball, but I do remember moving from what we called Birdville down to Brackenridge on Pacific Avenue, which was a new house my mom and dad had just built. And I was allowed to ride my sister's bicycle. And I thought that was really great because we had paved streets and things, and I could ride bicycles. So I remember that. And I remember my young brother and sister that was so much younger, and I had to help take care of them. That's what I remember.
We're going to start with the next question. What do you think was the number one thing that happened big that made a big difference to you? Like,
The number
such as
one,
anything that got built, or like,
well, the biggest change.
or something that happened in the world that made a big difference in the United States.
Well, I guess we always had a car, so that wasn't any, but I do remember one time my dad got a brand new car, and I really got in trouble because I ran around telling everybody that he paid $900 cash, and my mother was so angry that I told that he bought a brand new car for $900. But I do remember our first television, and the first TV really made an impression in everyone's life then, because everyone had to be in on Tuesday night to watch Milton Berle.
Is this supposed to be something when we're 11 or any time in
Or
our
just
life?
any time in your life it happened.
Well, I think the most important thing for me was when we bought our house on Eisenhower Drive. I thought I had a mansion because it was such a nice house and we were so happy. I think that was a pretty important thing. And of course having the children. Okay?
Okay, we're going to go to our next question. What were some of the fun things that you did as a kid that you really liked? And you might have answered some of those. Like,
Fun things. Well, like I said, it was riding the bicycle and going down to the corner dairy store where we'd meet our so-called boyfriends then, and go in and have sodas and go to the dance at the YMCA on Wednesday and Saturday night. To me, that was pretty much fun. Ellen?
Well, I remember when I was very young, we used to play outside at night. Hong Kong Kick the Can was a big game, and we had a lot of little games that we played. Everybody on the hill knew everybody, but when it came to being a little older, the fun things I did, I didn't have as much time to do fun things as some of the other kids, because we had 3 new little babies when I was a teenager, and I was pretty busy helping with them. But I always had a lot of time, good time going out. I can remember being in plays when I was in high school. I had the leading role in a couple of the plays, and that was fun.
okay, our next question is, do you remember any, like, your first vacation that you had, and how did it make you feel, like, really happy? And, like, your first vacation?
When I was a child, our vacations, I didn't realize that people went on vacations because we just didn't do that. I got to go to Girl Scout camp. But I do remember one time when I was about, probably 12 or 13, I was allowed to go with one of my cousins and my sister, I believe, and we visited our cousins in New Hampshire. And we spent about a week up there. And that was the only big vacation I remember, and we just had a ball. We went to the ocean, and they were really shocked because I wouldn't eat lobster or shrimp. I didn't like it. And I still don't.
Well, I think what I remember mainly was Mom and Dad packing all the kids in the car. And we thought it was a big trip when we went up to Chicora to see Grandma and Grandpa Kimmer. And it wasn't that far away, maybe an hour, but we thought that was really a big trip. And we had a good time up there because there was a barn and we'd jump in the hay and gather the eggs and take the milk into town real early in the morning on the truck. And Grandpa always teased me because I always liked sausage so well. And he'd say, well, I'm going to go out and dig up some sausage that I buried for Lois here. And I just remember those things.
My next thing is, can you remember anything funny at all that my mom or dad did?
Oh, wow. Wow, here we go.
Yes, I certainly can. I can remember probably she was, maybe about a freshman or maybe the 8th grade. And we allowed her to sleep out overnight at Chrissy's house, which was a block away. But they had to be promised they would not leave that porch or not. And they said they wouldn't. But at the same time, Ray and his friend were sleeping out in our yard. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, it was a hot evening, and we had the window propped open. And we hear this giggling, and there is your mother and Chrissy sneaking around, trying to scare Ray and his friend. And her dad yelled, "What the hell's going on up there?" And they just screamed and ran the whole way home, and we laughed for about an hour before we went back to sleep. And she still remembers that, I'm sure.
Oh, yes. I definitely do.
Gee, Steve was such a good boy. I can't think of anything he did that was ever wrong. He, oh golly, help me out, Steve. I can't even hardly think here.
How about with the monkey in the swimming pool?
The monkey, yeah, we lived in this corner apartment, and they had a monkey next door, and they left it hanging in the tree and everything. And it took after Steve when he was a little fella, and he came running in the kitchen door, and he was in the kitchen, but his shoes were still in the door. So he jumped right out of his shoes and came in the kitchen. Thanks for reminding me of that.
Can you remember, like, anything that your children did that was, like, really special to you on Mother's Day? Like, any gifts?
Yes, I
Maybe
always got,
Christmas too.
Christmas and,
Mhm.
you know, Easter.
I always got
holiday.
a nice card, and your mother always had a little poem printed and a little artwork. She doesn't do that kind of thing today, does she? This is her life. But anyhow, she was always artistic when she was little. But I do remember when, let me see, she was probably about 9 or 10, and Jim was 6 years old. And they all came, and I was sitting on a chair in the living room, and they all came and brought their Mother's Day gifts to me, you know. And Jim was the last one, and he said, "Here, Happy Mother's Day." And he threw his blankie at me. And he ran away, and he never come back for it. But the next day, I took it to my mother's, and I said, "Put this away somewhere in case I need it," because he carried that blanket with him everywhere. He used to watch when it went around in the dryer until it came out. And he gave it up, and he didn't ask for it back. And my mother said to me a few months later, "What am I supposed to do with this old rag?" But I always got special gifts, and your mother, it was usually something that she made herself. And I loved that. Still have some of those cards.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember especially one Christmas, I always wanted a corner cupboard for my little dining area. And my 3 kids, I don't know how they managed it, how they did it, but they went up to the Value City, or no, it wasn't Value City, what was it? GB's. And they got me a corner cupboard, which I still have in my home today and I still love. And they always got me nice things and beautiful cards. And of course, Steve had his way of writing. He'd always write pretty things in it, you know, how he's able to write. But there's just too many things to just name them all. They're very special.
Going back to your childhood again, like when you were my age, do you remember any Christmas gifts or anything that you got that was really special when you were a kid?
There always was a beautiful baby doll. Always. And when I think of the beautiful angelic faces they had in those days, they were so beautiful. But I was one of those naughty little girls that really played hard with her dolls. And none of them survived my childhood. Next year there would be another one, but I'm just so disappointed now that I didn't take better care of them and keep them, because I loved them. And it usually was a doll carriage with it or something like that. We always had a very nice Christmas and a lot of things. We always thought we weren't wealthy, but we felt like we were.
I especially remember my grandma Kemmer up at Shakora that I mentioned at the farm. When I was 12 years old, she gave me this little blue box with little flowers on the top, and it was a little china tea set. And I just loved that, and I have it to this day in my dining room up on the wall, because my grandma died 1 week later. And so I really valued that little tea set from my grandma.
Okay. Do you remember anything special that made you really love your grandparents and parents? Like,
What's this?
like,
Just about
what do you
their
remember?
parents in
What do you,
general.
Yeah. What about your parents? Your parents.
My parents.
Yeah.
My parents were very, very good people. Very. I think the most important thing in raising a child is to heading them in the right direction, giving them that knowledge of God and that love of God. And my parents were very, very good people, and not prairie, not overly, but we always had very good examples. And my dad never drank. I found out later, I see his name was in a book that somebody had showed me, that Felix McKenna, his father, and James McKenna and the boys had joined the Temperance Society. And never was mentioned to me, but all my dad's life he never ever drank any kind of liquor. Then after he had a heart attack when he was 58 years old, his doctor said, every night before you go to bed, I want you to take one little shot of whiskey. And he took it like he was taking medicine. He did not like the taste of it. He never complained about it, but I found out years later that that was why. And my mother, I just often wonder today all the work she had to do to raise 7 of us. And I remember when she died, I never knew what a strong person she was. But I can remember her saying how God had been so good to her, and she was so blessed. And this was days before she died. Instead of saying, why did this have to happen to me? She counted her blessings even then. And I knew how strong she was.
Well, my dad and I had a special relationship, I think. Now, he wasn't the kind to put his arms around you and hug you and all, but I just knew that I was important to him, that I was special. And my mom, she too was a strong woman. She liked a very nice house and things kept well, and she was very strict. But all in all, I think I had very great parents.
I also remember my grandfather, and I have to tell you this because these pictures don't come to mind very often, but I think every one of the grandchildren remember Grandpa McKenna sitting on the front porch peeling an apple and giving each one of us and we sat there like we were going to get a chocolate-covered cherry, waiting for our turn to get a slice of the apple. And my grandfather, this is my dad's father, was a very mild, meek man, I thought. But I found out through hearing stories from my uncles that he was a magnificent boxer. He was very, very fast with his fist, and he never ever, and this is something that is very common with Irish people, I guess. They were boxers, and they were brought up in this manner, but he would protect. And he was a small man, but my Uncle Charles said one day when he lived over in Clareton, a man came in and he said, "Your name is McKenna. Do you ever hear, or you're not related to someone by the name of Felix?" And he said, "That's my father." He said he had the fastest pair of fists I ever saw in my life. He boxed him when he was young, and he was a coal miner for 60 years.
Well, we heard about your parents, but tell us about your grandparents.
Lois, you go ahead. Dad.
Yeah, you go first. Sir.
Well, grandparents, like I said, that was a big thing for us to go up to the farm, and Grandma would come out with her long skirt on and her hair all tied back in a knot, typical grandparent. And Grandpa, he just later in years, Mom and Dad had a little place up at the farm, and as soon as he'd see them pulling in and us kids, he'd come down through the cornfield, so happy to see us. I just can remember the house and having happy times, and the thrashers coming in and Grandma preparing these big meals for the men to sit down and eat.
It was a custom in our family. Usually we would go with my dad over to visit Grandma on Sunday afternoon early, but around 1 or 2 o'clock, everybody would pick up and go to the other grandparents, my grandfather. My grandmother died when I was 13 months old. That would be my mother's mother. She died of cancer, and every week we would go to one of the homes. There were 4 children, and my mother and Aunt Helen and Joe and Tom. And each week we would go to each other's house and have a big dinner, and so I remember family meals together and clans, and that was tradition with us for years.
Can you tell us a little bit of how your ancestors came to this country?
Well, I really don't believe it now, but my grandpa McKenna, the boxer, said he swam over, but he had he had a heck of a time because he had that refrigerator on his back, or cooking stove or something. And he told us a lot of big tales. He had the Irish wit and charm. And as we got a little older, we realized how gullible we were.
You thought that was a good story at the time. I really don't know from my grandparents. They're German descent and they're Irish, but I really don't know how they came to this country, or I guess they were all born here. I don't know.
I think my grandmother and grandfather met after they came here, and they married quite young. I think she was maybe 16 or something like that, and they met here. My grandfather was raised by his grandmother, and he saved enough money to come over, and he had a little bit of money put aside, and his uncle brought him, and he had his money hidden in a Bible, and I understand that his uncle took his money because he was a drinking man, and it was soon gone. That's about the only story I ever heard about my family.
I can remember one thing I forgot to tell you about my dad when we were talking about parents. He always told us he was quite the young, dashing guy in his day, and he drove this car. He said he drove it with one leg out over through the window, and he was going to court my mom up on the farm. And he had a record of being a fast driver. And Grandpa was up in the cherry tree picking cherries, and Dad thought he would take a shortcut through the field, and he hit the tree and knocked Grandpa out of the cherry tree. So he didn't get off too good of a start with my mother. I remember that.
What were some of the chores or work you did when you were a kid?
Go ahead, Mom. You go first.
Okay, every Saturday morning, whether it needed it or not, my sister, who was 2 years older than I, we dusted. the living room, the dining room, and we had to get down on the floor and make sure we got the legs of everything. Then you scrubbed the kitchen floor and you scrubbed the cellar steps down. That was just automatic. And I'd always try to get mine done real fast so I could go on that bicycle. And then another chore we had, my mother would go do the grocery shopping every Saturday morning, so we would take care of my brother and sister. And when she came home at noon, all the time there was chipped ham from Isley's, and that was a big treat, and fresh buns.
Whenever in our family, my mother and dad had 4 children, and then a 9-year gap and 3 more children in very close succession. So whenever Bob, the first of the 3, was born, I think I was 13 years old, maybe a little older. And while my mother was in the hospital, I had to help out at home, and I ironed my dad's shirts. And at that time, they were stiff collar, stiff cuffs, starched down the front. And my mother was so thrilled that I did such a beautiful job on those shirts that was my job for the rest of my life and
iron
until
the
I was
shirts.
married. Every Monday night was ironing night. And whenever people would come to see the baby, she would show off her new son, and then she'd show off the shirts that Helen ironed. And that was basically my main job.
Is there any other special comments you would like to make on your past than today?
Say what today is.
From what today is?
Say today's Mother's Day. Tell today's Mother's Day and that it's 1998.
Well, today's Mother's Day and it's 1998. And
Just see if they have any closing thing they want to say.
do you have any closing things that you would like to say?
Yes, I do. I just want to say that, Mary Beth, I'm so impressed that you thought enough to come up with this idea of interviewing and finding out things. We're remembering things that we haven't thought about for a long, long time. But I think you're a wonderful girl, and you have such an imagination and a good quality. I think someday you're going to be a great writer or a great storyteller.
Or a movie star.
And I'm very, very impressed with you. And we raised 5 wonderful children. Your mother was a good little girl, never gave me any trouble. And I love her to death, and I love them all. Lois?
Well, I'm about the same. And Mary Beth knows how much I love her and how talented she is. And I just want to say that I'm just so thankful for all of my family, and I have considered it very much a privilege that my son could marry such a wonderful girl and have such nice in-laws. Thanks, Mary Beth, for this beautiful, beautiful time with you. And thanks, everyone, for
And I
Happy
want-
Mother's Day.
I want to say, too, that I said I have 5 wonderful children, and I'm so grateful for my husband, Ray. Glad to have him getting better and recovering, and we're just happy.
What did you say last night?
Well, I'd like to thank you. You guys are both really great grandmas, grandmas, and I think you guys are really great, and I look up to you.
Oh, thank you,
Thank you,
Beth.
Mary Beth. That
We
was
love
sweet.
you.
That was very sweet.
Loved you very much.
Great
Okay,
question.
say goodbye.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and bye.
Stay tuned for the next.
Taking. I'm hurrying up to get the camera. Rocky's doing his butt walk. Wait. Aw.
I don't want to go near lady then.
Oh. Hey, now this is getting too hot. It's boiling away.
Hey, Rocky.
Let's turn this on.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we gonna be eating? We are eating very soon.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what? We could pour that well when I'll pour that cream. Yeah, pour your cranberry juice.
Oh, another one.
And let's see. Hi.
Organized here. There's not much. Very little grease in there at all.
Hey, Mom.
Okay, so let's see what we need here. We got corn.
Put a spoon in it. There, a big spoon.
I'm gonna just put this as a double.
That was something that
Happy birthday. Yeah, from Matt.
he was confusing everybody. That's tell.
He's just showing us.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Yeah.
Someone started.
Okay, we're gonna sing happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Matt. Happy birthday to you. Remember when your cake used to be big
I
and
know,
decorated with
Pirates
everything?
and things down there just Pepperidge Farm.
You mean there's no Ghostbusters on that cake?
No.
He didn't give Green Bay a break on the crowd noise. Probably didn't seem too noisy.
Okay, let's see.
Jackie.
Hey, Matt. Look up here. Who you got there? Aw. There's little Sierra. Hi, Sierra. Hey. She is so cute. Doing a good job there, Matt.